Hey guys, go ahead and make sure that you get out a piece of paper. We're going to do a quick review at the beginning, and then we're going to get right into our notes with a new method called the elimination method. So go ahead and get a piece of paper out, and I want you to complete these three problems. Let me get my ugly mug out of here. Go ahead and pause the video and complete these three problems. All right, for substitution, this first one, number one, they're both solved, so we'll take that one. It says y equals, so I'm going to place it right here. And since the y is all by itself over there, essentially just put that negative 5x plus 21 right here in that spot. So I have negative 5x plus 21, 6x minus 12. And I'm going to solve that equation. Okay, variables are on both sides right now, so we need to get them on one side. Minus 6x on both sides. And they're going to be over here to add together. I have to move the 21, so minus 21 on both sides. That's 0, and I'm going to add those up. And I'm going to get negative 11x equals negative 33. Finish him. Divide by negative 11, and x equals 3. So I have that part. Now what I need to do is I need to plug this back in. And since they're both solved, it really doesn't matter which x. You have to choose one. And I'll just go ahead and choose that top one. So I have negative 5 times 3, because my x is 3, plus 21. So it'll be negative 15 plus 21, which is 6. So for number one, we get 3, 6. Right? 3, 6. For number two, need some space. Number two, the top one is solved. Okay, the bottom one is not. It says y equals, so I'm going to remove that y. And by removing that y, since it's in the middle, I'm going to use a parenthesis right there. Okay, so when I rewrite this, it's going to say negative 2x minus 2. I don't have this y, I put a parenthesis in its place, then equals 10. Inside the parentheses, I'm going to put that negative 2x minus 12. And I have to be careful here when I solve this, especially when I distribute this negative 2. So negative 2 times negative 2x, that's positive 4x. Negative 2 times negative 12, that's positive 24. Add your x's together, and I'm going to have 2x plus 24 equals 10, minus 24 from both sides, and I get negative 14. Finish him. Divide by 2, and x is negative 7. Now I got my x answer. Now I need to plug it back in again. Use the solved equation, so I'm going to put it in for that x there. So I'd have negative 2 times negative 7 minus 12. That'd be 14 minus 12, which is 2. So y is 2. So my answer for that second one would be negative 7 for my x and 2 for my y. Now the last part, I have to use a little bit of critical thinking, see if you can figure out two numbers that multiply to be 36 and also add up to be 15. Probably the easier of the ways, and this is something that we'll eventually use in our problems, is I'm going to focus on ways to multiply and get that 36. Okay, so the one that's most forgotten tends to be 1 times 36. Well, 1 times 36 is 36. But if I add that, it's not the addition that I want it to be. I want it to add up to be 15. Okay. The next number would be 2. And I know 2 times 18 is 36. Well, if I add those, 2 plus 18, I get 20. So far, none of them work. Next number is 3. 3 times 12 is 36. And 3 plus 12 is 15. So the two numbers would be 3 and 12. Those would be my two numbers. Okay. All righty. Now, today, my young grasshoppers, we are going to be working on elimination. Okay. One of the key components of elimination is step one, and that is the part where we make opposites. Make sure you're writing this stuff down. Okay. If you need to pause, if I get done too early, just pause it and finish writing. But we need to make opposites, and I'm going to show you. We're going to focus the first part of our lesson on how to do that. Just to be crystal clear, there is more than one way to do that first step, but I'm going to show what I call the foolproof method. It does not mean that it is always the best method, because there might be some other ways to do it that maybe would involve smaller numbers, but it always works this way. Okay, the way that I'm going to show you. Um, Once we get opposites, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to eliminate one of the variables by adding our two equations together. Okay. Once we eliminate that variable, we're going to be able to solve and get our first answer. Okay. From there, it's very similar to substitution, because we're going to plug our first answer back in, substitute it back in, make sure you put it in for the right variable. Okay. You're going to solve the equation you have left, and then you can still check same way that we were doing before. Again, what we're going to focus on first here is how do we make opposites? Okay, so I'm going to have two numbers up here. Okay, 6x and 8x, and I want to make these two opposites. Okay, I want to make sure we understand there is more than one way to do this. Okay, I'm going to show you one of them. Okay, and the method that I use for making opposites, okay, is, remember, we're using multiplication. Okay, we're going to multiply the top by the bottom, and then we're going to multiply the bottom by opposite of the top. And if we do that correctly, we will always end up with variables that cancel out. Okay, now keep in mind this will be a part of a bigger problem, but how this works, top by the bottom, so my top equation, we would multiply by 8, so times by 8. The bottom equation by opposite of the top. So the bottom one, instead of multiplying by 6, I'm going to multiply by -6. And what happens when I do this, when I multiply that, that's going to give me a 48x. On the bottom, when I multiply, it's going to give me a negative 48x. Okay? And that is our foolproof way. Again, I want to make sure we understand there are different ways to do it, okay, that do not follow this prescribed method. Okay, as long as you use multiplication and you end up with opposites, technically it will work. Okay, so let's look at a few problems. The only thing, again, we're going to focus on in these first three is the step of making the opposites, and then we'll put the whole process together. Okay, so go ahead and write down this first problem. Okay, we have -7x minus 5y equals 5. And we have -3x plus 15y equals -15. Now, neither of these two are solved. So that's what lends itself to, I don't want to use substitution, because if I go and try to solve for one of these variables, I have the potential of opening myself up to fractions. It's not going to be as simple as just using elimination. Okay, so if I'm using what Mr. Alone describes as a foolproof method, you are going to focus on these two numbers. So these other numbers will come into play, but I'm focused on those two. Okay, top by the bottom, bottom by opposite of the top. So top by the bottom means I'm going to multiply this top equation by -3. Bottom by opposite of the top. So my bottom equation, I'm going to multiply by, get that out of there, by the opposite of -7. Well, opposite of -7 is +7. Okay. Now, when I do that, I have to make sure I multiply all three parts by this number. Okay, if I miss a multiplication, that's going to mess up my problem. So all three of these by -3, so -7x times -3 is positive 21x. -5y times -3 is positive 15y. And 5 times -3 is -15. Okay. The bottom equation, all three of these, I have to multiply by 7. So that's going to give me -21x. 15y times 7 is positive 105y. And -15 times 7 is -105. And I want you to notice that now when I look at my x's, I have two numbers that when added, they are going to be, it's a different color, those two add up to 0. And that's where the elimination comes in, is you'll end up adding these two equations together. We're not going to spend time doing that right now, but that's what our next step would be. Okay, we're going to add these equations together, and we're going to see 21x plus -21x, that is 0. Okay, and it's going to leave me an equation with just y's in it. Okay, let's practice this part a couple more times. So let's look at number 2. Okay, let's go ahead and write this one down. We have 9x plus 6y equals 15, and 8x plus 7y equals 10. So again, we're going to focus on these two. Okay, now I look, and I didn't say this the first time, but you should always check. These are not opposites. The y's are not opposites. So I don't have them sitting right there. I have to make my own. So again, we have top equation by the bottom number. So top by 8 times 8. The bottom by opposite of the top. So the bottom equation by the opposite of 9. Well, the opposite of 9 is -9. Okay, and we just got to be careful when we multiply here. 9x times 8 is 72x. 6y times 8 is positive 48y. Again, take your time with these multiplications. Make sure you get them right. 15 times 8 is 120. Okay, on the bottom, multiplying by a -9. 8x times -9 is -72x. 7y times -9 is -63y. And 10 times -9 is -90. And again, I want you to notice here, our x's are going to add up to 0. And that's the whole goal of that first step. Okay, what'll happen, again, is when I add these, I'm just going to have y's as my only variable. I'm going to be able to solve this equation and figure out what the y is. Okay, let's do this step one more time. Okay, and let's use these two. So again, and I'm going to show you a little something with this one here in a second. Okay, but again, I look at this one, -12x minus 8y equals 8. We have 6x plus 6y equals -24. Okay, again, my x's don't add up to 0. My y's don't add up to 0. So I need to make that happen. Okay, if you follow the foolproof way, we're going to go top by the bottom. So the top equation by the bottom number. So top by 6. The bottom equation by opposite of the top number. So the opposite of -12 is +12. Okay, and I do my multiplications. So I go 6 times 12 -72x. -8y times 6 is -48y. And 8 times 6 is 48. Again, be careful. Take your time when you're doing your multiplications. 6x times 12 is 72x. 6y times 12 is 72y. And negative 24 times 12, I believe, is negative 288. Yep. And again, notice I have opposites with my x's. So I'm going to be able to add these equations together, and you'll see that here in a little bit, and I'll be able to finish the problem. Now, I do want to point out that there are ways to do problems like number 3 without Mr. Loan's foolproof method, okay? Some people would look at this problem and say, well, hey, wait a second. If I multiply this 6 on the bottom by 2, if I multiply this 6 on the bottom by 2, that's going to give me a 12x, and I can leave this one alone and watch what happens, okay? So it's not the foolproof way, but it's a little different. Got negative 12x minus 8y equals 8 because you multiplied by 1, you left it alone. The bottom, I would get 12x plus 12y equals negative 48. Okay, notice I have opposites with my x's. So that would be a valid way to do that first step of making opposites. Okay. Obviously you see smaller numbers here. Okay, but it's not a foolproof way. You have to be able to think of that on your own. Okay, so there are some different ways. I don't want you to believe that my way is the only way, but this is the way I'm going to show when I do my problems with you. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the whole process here. We're going to do 3 problems all the way through, okay, the entire process, and figure out what our solutions are. So we have this first one, 3x minus 5y equals negative 30, and 9x plus 7y equals negative 24. X's don't add up to 0, y's don't add up to 0, so I have to make my own opposites, okay? Again, I'm going to follow the foolproof way. Top by the bottom. Change back to red. Top by the bottom number. So top times 9. The bottom by opposite of the top. So the bottom by negative 3. And let's multiply here. 3x times 9 is 27x. Negative 5y times 9 is negative 45y. And negative 30 times 9 is negative 270. Go on to the bottom. 9x times negative 3 is negative 27x. 7y times negative 3 is negative 21y. And negative 24 times negative 3 is positive 72. Okay? And notice I have opposites with my x's, so I'm good. I'm going to add my equations together. So when I add these two, it's 27x plus negative 27x, that's 0. It's eliminated. Negative 45y plus negative 21y would be negative 66y. Negative 270 plus 72 is negative 198. Finish him. Divide by negative 66. And y is, I believe it's 3. Yep, y is 3. Okay. Now, the one part that's a little different when I go to plug this back in is I don't have a solved equation. So you're going to have to choose which one that you like better. Okay. There's no right or wrong way as long as this 3 goes in for a y. So I'm either putting it in for that y or I'm putting it in for that y. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and use the top equation. Okay. So the 3x minus 5y equals negative 30. And I'm putting my 3 where that y is. So 3x minus 5 times 3 equals negative 30. This is going to end up giving me an equation to solve. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. and I solve this equation. Plus 15 on both sides. I get 3x equals, that is a 15, equals negative 15. Finish him. Divide by 3, and x is negative 5. So I get x is negative 5, y is 3. If I wanted to check, and you don't have to check, a lot of times I do it in my head, we would plug these numbers into my other equation. So my x would be negative 5, my y is 3, and I check it out. So 9 times negative 5 is negative 45, 7 times 3 is 21, and if I add those together, I do get negative 24. So I know I have the correct answer. Let's look at another one here. Write this one down. 2x plus 9y equals negative 9, and 3x plus 7y equals negative 20. Again, I look at my x's, those add up to 5x, it doesn't help me. I look at my y's, that adds up to 16y, it doesn't help me. I want it to add up to 0. So I have to make my own opposites, okay? Top by the bottom, so the top by the bottom number 3, bottom by opposite of the top, so times negative 2. Okay, let's go ahead and multiply that out. So that's going to give me 6x plus 27y equals negative 27. Okay, again, be careful when you do your multiplications. That's where I see a lot of mistakes early on. The bottom, everything by negative 2. So I have negative 6x, negative 14y, and positive 40. And I look here, and yay, my x's add up to 0. So let's add these equations to get together. Negative 6x, or 6x plus negative 6x is 0. 27y plus negative 14y is 13y. Negative 27 plus 40 is 13. Finish him. And I get y equals 1. So I have my first answer. Plug it back in. Again, I'm going to use that top equation. I do need to make sure I'm putting it in for the y. So 2x plus, my y answer is 1, so 9 times 1 equals negative 9. 9 times 1 is 9. Minus 9 on both sides. I get 2x equals negative 18. Finish him. And x is negative 9. Okay, so my answer should be negative 9, 1, x, y. Now, if I go to check it out, I'd use my other equation. I'd plug in those numbers, negative 9 and 1. See, 3 times negative 9 is negative 27. 7 times 1 is 7. That's supposed to equal negative 20, and it does. So I know I'm good. Okay, the last one here, I do want you to see this, okay? So I have this one, negative 7x. Go ahead and write it down. Negative 7x minus 4y equals negative 27. And 7x plus 3y equals 22. What I should notice here is, oh, sweet. Notice it already has something that adds up to 0. Okay, so since these already add up to 0, I don't have to make opposites. They're already there. So I get to skip this whole first step where I'm changing the equations because they're sitting there for me. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our equations together. Negative 7x plus 7x is 0. Negative 4y plus 3y is negative 1y. Negative 27 plus 22 is negative 5. Finish him. Oh, there's my first answer. I got y is 5. I need to plug it back in. Now, again, this is an answer for y, so I either need to plug it in for this y or this y. I'm just going to go ahead and stick to the top equation. So I'd have negative 7x minus 4 times 5 equals negative 27. See, negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. and I solve this two-step equation. Add 20 to both sides. I get negative 7x equals negative 7. Finish him. Whoa. And I get x equals 1. So x is 1, y is 5. Okay. All right, so that's our elimination method. Okay. What you are going to do now is you're going to start on the homework. There's 8 problems. The answers are on there. So let's go ahead and start on the homework. When you are done with that, make sure you are getting caught up on old work. We've got to make sure we're staying up to pace. Otherwise, things are just going to keep piling up. So you have a wonderful day, and we will see you.